In conversation with Lincoln Shand, Lincoln is an organizational strategic designer and facilitator in the data science, data management. In his day job, Lincoln prepares individuals and groups for the future of work while enabling them to follow their passions and find their purpose in the emerging AI-augmented world. Previously, Lincoln spent years in the performing arts, including being a professional dancer and choreographer. He enjoys telling stories that allow readers to lose themselves in the lives of complex characters. Lincoln has always been fascinated by the world of magic, warriors, good versus evil, and the mind blowing adventure that a well crafted science fiction novel could bring. Lincoln lives in Hamilton, Ontario, where he and his spouse bought a fix-upper old century home with a lot of charms and discovered the joy, tears, and two near-death experiences of DIY renovations. And on today's episode of Auto Interview, it's my utmost pleasure, joy, and excitement to have on the show today, Lincoln Shand. How are you doing, Lincoln?
Doing great. Thank you for having me here and actually just for reaching out. Yeah, I'm really excited just to share my work and my joys that I find in writing with actually others.
Yeah.
Definitely talk about my books, but also talk about my experience with writing and how it just brings me joy and brings me back to my creative spirit, basically.
Absolutely. I love that. It's quite lovely. You're ready to go on an amazing adventure, riding up in interview conversation, literature wise. Thanks. Thank you so much for coming on. Yeah, yeah. So, Lincoln, I would like to ask you about your book, In the Father's Shadow, which is a first book in the Mage Crowder series. And I would
Ooh.
like to ask you, how does this book come about? What inspired you to write In the Father's Shadow? And how did you even come up with that title for a book name?
Oh, fantastic question. I started writing. This is gonna be funny, but I started writing because a friend of mine wanted to write a book, and he was
Wow.
looking for a writing circle. So I'm like, okay, I have a few stories. I've been writing since I was a kid, just poetry and just short stories.
Wow.
So I said I'll write with him. Funny enough, I think about a year into it, he gave up. But at that point, I had 50 pages. So I'm like, I can do this.
Wow.
I wrote it over actually a span of by the way, I started this back in 2004. I wrote over a span of a few years, and I got all the way through book two in 2013, and
Mm,
then paused it. And then, ironically, actually, not ironically, but back in 2020, when the world was locked down, and I'm not a television person, talking
mm,
to a friend of mine, and she suggested that I go back to my books and just start writing again. And yeah,
mm,
just filling out the story and yeah, In the Father's Shadow, the title came about because I don't know. I mean, sometimes life imitates art and vice versa. And for me, I really wanted to emphasize that even if you have parents or family or work and live in a community, you're not defined by them. You're defined by how you go on your own journey and how
mm,
you live your own kind of just some purpose. So really coming out of actually this character really came out from his father's shadow and really became his own person. And I was fascinated by that kind of dynamic and that kind of ability to be yourself, basically, in a world where everyone tells you you're one way. So,
mm.
yeah.
Oh, wow. That sounds to me like an amazing, very fun, and unexpected ride into becoming a writer. The fact, I love the story you shared in there. Your friend wanted to write a book and was looking for a writing partner, and you jump into it and took on the
Yeah.
lead and continue. And here you have a tons of books already written. It's an amazing adventure you've got coming all the way along. Thanks for sharing. I love the sound of it.
No problem. And it's funny, I continue to write. I mean, I have this series and then I have my next series, which we'll talk about
Wow,
a bit later. First
wow,
book is already finished and I'm just looking to
wow,
get that published. And the second book is already written and actually just in
wow.
revisions right now. So, yeah.
That's a lot you've got ongoing. That's a lot. And I'd like us to jump now into the follow-up
Ooh,
series in the name of Titan's Power. For readers who
ooh.
haven't read that yet, and of course, without giving much information away, did we have a sneak of what you would expect in terms of themes and subject lines picking up Titan's Power? And I'd love you to show the book to the camera too.
Fantastic. Well, this one is actually just the main characters, Togan and Jishra. They finally meet, And you hear about them or you read about them in the first book, but really
Mm,
diving into the character developments. In the first book, In the Fall of Shadow, where Tolkien was really trying to discover that there are different ways of living out there, rather
mm,
than the way that his father and his the father's culture tell him that they should be. And then
yeah.
it's actually just really discovering and making choices for himself, basically based on the people that he's interact with. And I
Mm,
really actually just for characters. I mean, character development, character driven, and it's interesting how small, like not even small, is that not the right word for it, but incidental meetings with people that you never thought that you would have anything in common with, how they could shift the course of your life either with one sentence, with one gesture, with with one kind of actually just way of living. So yeah, I'm taking the main character Togan, put him into a different world, getting him to
wow.
actually to see expand and learn more about himself.
Mm,
Also learning about his power and his actually just his magic and how basically he can really do things a lot of people can't, and put him in situations where he can make choices that are different. And then for
mm,
the other characters as well, was really making sure that they have their own journey, their own kind of just way of really interacting with him and others as well. And yeah, so Token discovering that he's a good person despite
wow.
himself.
Wow, that's quite amazing. And I love your take into delving a bit into the characterization because I myself, when I read books, when I read novels, I love to get engrossed into the characterization to see what one person is doing and see what the next person is doing and to see how they carry on from one series to the next one, to the next one, to the next one. I'm always eager, head back to my share. What is the fighter? What's going to be the next one? What is coming up next? And I'm a huge
Mm-hmm.
fan of characterization. It moves me a lot when I'm reading, whatever genre it be. But I love
Mm-hmm.
engrossing myself into characterization because I'm always looking forward to see what becomes of them the next one, what becomes of them the upcoming one, etc.
Mm-hmm.
Love your take on that as well.
Well, you're following people's story. You're discovering more about
Yeah,
themselves as you're discovering more about them as they discover more about themselves. So
absolutely.
it's and if their stories are interesting and you really, I hope I wrote characters that you care about, regardless if they're the primary characters or the secondary or even some third line characters that you really
Yeah.
want to see what happened to them. I hope. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you. And Lincoln, one of the most interesting things to me as a writer is to sit back and listen to readers' feedbacks. And you may want to agree with me that one of the things that make literature to be quite complex in its entirety is the fact that it can be interpreted in different ways by different readers based on their opinions. And sometimes the readers might get the message intended by the author. Sometimes they might be close to getting the message. Sometimes they might be far from it, several miles away, several kilometers away from it. And sometimes they might hilariously misunderstand the entire message and interpret the book upside down. And as interestingly fun as this sound, I would like to ask you, how do you feel when readers interpret your works differently than you intended? How does it make you feel?
Is thoroughly love that. I mean, obviously, you're hoping that they interpret it in a way that brings them happiness or joy as well.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, it's when readers actually look at your story and they find things in there that you didn't intend.
yeah.
For one, it gives me actually just information back about, hey, there's something about that phrasing, something about the way the sentence is structured, or that phrase, or even that paragraph, whatever it is, that really elicits some unintended kind of like interpretations in that. And I'm really curious to find where people find those little nuances. And
Mm,
I find I would invite people just to even just to take that and just to explore. Um,
mm,
I've also, nothing has ever been shared, but I do a lot of fan fiction on my own for works that I've written. I thought about, hey, that particular line, what could be the possible backstory? And for
wow.
me, I kind of bring that interpretation into how I read. Don't share anything, but because actually some others work. But yeah, I would love to spark that in readers. And for feedback, if yeah, sometimes they read things slightly differently.
Mm,
True, and obviously a lot of this writing is built on my lived experience. Without giving anything away, I mean, I was one feedback was like, "Oh, you didn't make the character transition to blah blah blah
Mm,
quickly enough." But I'm like, "Oh, realizing that my shared my experience in regards to how I wrote it, it's like yeah, I I have not had a chance to actually just to transition quickly without
mm,
others kind of putting judgments onto what I
mm.
do or whatever. Hopefully, I'm not being too clear, but yeah, it's interesting when they interpret it, and I do interpret it based on their lived experience. And I'm always curious when I get feedback about, and I see that their lived experience is being written into the story
Mm.
that they are reading and how they're interpreting things. So I'm fascinated by that. It gives me information, and I hope that it does give them some things to spring from their imagination as well. So yeah.
Yeah, I love your answers to these questions, really. I love the fact that you mentioned that, there's something about how sentence is structured and make you want to like, oh, this is quite beautiful. Because I myself, as much as I'm a writer, I'm a huge fan of words. When I read books and I love certain structure, and that's one thing I think writing is quite fun, very beautiful. One thing that makes it really
Yeah.
quite fun is the fact that when you read certain sentence and it's so beautiful. I mean, the
Mm-hmm.
way the author can place word side by side and describe some certain scenarios in a way that sometimes it will give you an extreme joy within your heart. Oh, that was wonderful. That was
Mm-hmm.
impressive. That was sometimes I will pause and go back and said, I love this line. That was very
Oh,
wholesome. That was
yeah.
beautiful. How were you able to come up with that? I mean, I'm a huge fan of words and I can relate when you mentioned that. And again, like you said, I think that's one of the reasons too. One of the reasons as well that make book conversation to be quite fun. How you can be in a room of three people or four or five or even 10 talking about a particular book. The way the first person will interpret it would differ entirely from the way the second person would interpret
Yes,
it,
I love that.
would differ
Yeah.
for the third, fourth, and all of it brings a diverse sort of reviews, diverse sort of interpretations and meaning, and I can relate to it. I think it's a good feeling, really, having people interpret some slight one differently. I said, oh, wow, I never thought of it that way. Quite great. Thanks for the
Well,
highlight.
well, it shows actually just like I said, the power of words, and when people actually just yes, it's shared experiences, but if there are different ways to interpret a sentence, I mean, granted, sometimes you have to be very want to be very precise to
Mm,
help build the plot in a certain area, but there's some things as well that you well, personally, I'm able to talk for myself.
yeah.
I like it when readers question
Mm,
what is being said in the sentence,
mm.
and my editor pointed this out to me. Or actually, one of my editors pointed out to me that who read my book first was that I actually give people a lot of clues of what's going to happen if you
Oh,
read the sentences beforehand, right,
wow.
to be able to interpret and figure out what's going, how things are unrolling. And granted, I've been told that my stories are very unpredictable, which is great
Wow.
compliment because I don't know what's going to happen.
That's
But if
impressive.
they go back, well, I hope so, and I hope they get it. But if they go back and read it a second time, they would realize that oh, I actually said that really early on. So yeah,
You
if you're
said
paying
that
attention, you actually
stylishly.
yeah
You said that
yeah
while they were
exactly.
engrossed in the story, they couldn't pay attention to that. You said that in a skillful manner, in a way that's quite hidden and ominous for them to see. I love your take on that. That was quite funny.
All right.
Very fun. Thank you so much for sharing.
No worries. Just
Yeah.
add one more thing, actually, just from what you said as well with words and sentences, if you don't mind. I mean, I love actually just with words and sentences. Sometimes you don't realize the impact of a sentence you're writing until afterwards. Because I obviously, like all writers, yourself included, you go back and you start editing and you realize that, oh, that's actually a really powerful
Yeah.
statement. So, anyway, just want to add on to that.
Yeah. I love that too. Thanks for sharing. Thank you. I'd also like to ask you, yeah, without giving spoilers, would you like to briefly tell us about the making of a sister's sacrifice?
Ah, yes, thank you. So, yeah, Sister Sacrifice. So, this is the final book in this series.
Uh,
Um, well, I don't know. Like, do you have sisters or just
yeah, I have one. I have an elder sister and I have a junior
eh,
sister.
okay,
I'm
okay.
the
So,
middleman.
You're the you're the middle child.
I'm the
Yeah.
middleman.
Okay. Well, you're probably spoiled rotten. In a good way. In a good way. I'm the youngest child, and I am spoiled rotten. But anyway, much as my siblings will tell you. But okay, sisters. So I mean, a few things, a few levels is this is really a homage to my sisters, my sister-in-laws, the
Wow.
powerful women in my life that's actually just made me who I am today. But they've more than that, they've really contributed things to the family that people don't realize, and maybe we don't acknowledge enough. So, Sister Sacrifice, just an homage to the unspoken things that they've done to really help our family.
Mm,
So, is built into the story itself, where you find that the power of actually just not only sisterhood, but the power of basically just being, I don't know, really there for the ones that need them, whether they realize it or not. And
mm,
even actually, when I delve in, for example, into the hero, his
mm.
sister, based on the culture of where his father is from, is
Wow.
perceived as a villain. And I'm not going to spoil it, but there are some things that even she does that is not really visible until actually just you realize what they do. So yeah, Sister Sacrifice, and it is, by the way, slightly bigger than the other volumes because I wanted to
Crazy.
finish the story
For leaving us.
in this book. And I really hopefully I tie all the loose ends together in regards to Token's journey, Jishra's journey, and it's just the whole entire magic system, the world building that's been there. And
Wow.
I don't let the villain get defeated quickly or easily. Like it's a struggle to get there, and I really want people just to like the characters have to earn it. Basically, they have to really work together and actually just figure out a way to yeah, just to find their like power basically. So yeah,
Mm,
that's a sister sacrifice. It's based on actually just how my own personal relationship to the women in my life, but also as well just helping them to they really drive this story forward and
wow.
help it to a conclusion. Yeah.
That's amazing. I love the description of a sister sacrifice. And I love the title. Sounds to me like the book title resonates so well with the story you've just shared. There's a sacrifice in it in between. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah, I want to move now into how the inspiration to all these books come to be. Because I myself have always been fascinated by how authors, especially novelists like yourself, would sit down and craft long sentences and bring words together in a way that sentences come together to make paragraph and paragraph coalition come together to make pages and pages coming together to make chapters and chapters making an eventual big novels you've shown to the camera so far. I just always leave me thinking, how exactly did they get the ideas to bring these sentences together, to bring these paragraphs together, to bring these pages together in a way that over and over again it keeps transitioning beautifully, that an amazing book is made eventually. And I'd like to ask you, as far as writing is concerned, how do you get the inspirations and ideas to write your books? Where did they come from? I'm just curious.
Oh, what a great question. Thank you. Um, wow. I guess for me, I mean, I've always been in the creative field. So, way back when, probably about 20 years and 30 pounds ago, I used to be a professional dancer and choreographer.
Um,
So, just really creating stories that reflect the complexity of human life. And you'll
mm,
find in my actually just stories that no one is, and it's reality. No one's completely good, no one's completely bad. We all exist in the grace. Well, finding the stories, I mean, I've always created stories to really, I don't know, one, help people escape sometimes because I really love reading books to pure escapism. Nothing to do with reality whatsoever. It's why I read a lot of fantasy and sci-fi novels.
mm,
But yeah, just sitting down there and really crafting these stories. I love writing myself into a corner where basically even if I'm writing sentences and figure out what the next sentence would be, and I
mm,
realized I could drop a statement in there, and I'm like, oh, I then have to ask myself, in what possible needs to happen in this world that I've created? What needs to happen for that sentence to be true? And
mm,
so that helps me then to actually go back and to fill in some other details to help me
mm,
then take that sentence like, okay, it now works and go forward.
Mm,
And really just adding in this the paragraph, this the life. I like I said, a lot of character driven, a lot of emotions. It's not
mm,
just words or actions. It's actually what
mm,
people are saying, doing, and it is a reflection of how we exist, like how we go through life. And so you'll find that when you think about that, hey, if this particular character is this way with these kind of characteristics,
mm,
what they kind of tend to start writing themselves. And I'll give you a precise example. There's one character in the Mage's Cradle, Selena. She was only supposed to be there for one or two chapters. All of
wow.
a sudden, she had such a powerful voice. Her story was just there, that
Wow.
she became one of the main characters, and she just stayed for the whole entire thing. So
Evolving
yeah,
greatly.
yeah. So I don't know if I answered your question correctly. I mean, it's just like, but no, it's just for me, writing is a joy. Writing is a passion.
Mm,
Yes, like everyone else, I get stuck sometimes, and then I go through like with writing myself in a corner. Then I ask the question I just asked before. But then it's like sitting down there for me, 8 to 9 p.m. That's my writing time. That's when I do something to craft this work. And even if sometimes it's writing a paragraph, sometimes it's 5 pages. Obviously, not all of them stay because it's
wow.
actually through the editing process. But I find just putting words together and just trying different things and building off the character and just really helping their voice to help drive the story
Mm,
helps me to craft the whole entire actually story and then just yeah, weaving it all together and hopefully it makes sense. So great question. I hope I answered it actually well, but it's just yeah, really getting the character's voice to come out and to really help drive the story forward. It needs to become.
absolutely. I love your answer to that. It's quite deep, quite educative as well, and very enlightening. Yeah. Thanks for sharing. Thank you. And now,
No
apart
worries.
from
Great
the
question. Yeah.
Scrado series, apart from the Mage Scrado series, do you have any other works you've authored or say currently working on?
Out me getting up. So I do. I have this is just an advanced reader's copy of my next series. So it's called The Root of Infinity, and I want to thank, by the way, the people on my website who helped voted for the title. And the first book is called Conjunction Born. Yeah, this series is a mixture of sci-fi and fantasy, and the
Oh,
premise is really about well, it's about actually just what happens when worlds collide.
mm,
So the main story is a story about the like a legend has it that a galaxy has a soul, and that soul is called the Unitree, and that
mm,
tree touches every single planet in our galaxy. But an insidious kind of another galaxies colliding,
mm,
seeping in, and merging with our galaxy. And the main point is that five magically gifted individuals who
wow,
are outcasts must realize that they have a shared secret that could help save the people that they hold dear, but it also makes them the hunted target of an entire galaxy.
wow.
So it's yeah, it's really interesting. It's just mixing like five different kind of world buildings,
Mm,
5 different planets, 5 different kind of actually different characters. Some of them are magic based. There's one culture that's completely science based, and how and you've probably heard it before. Good science is just as good as magic.
mm,
So really blending these together and finding helping each characters find their voice.
mm.
And like I said, they're outcasts and really helping them to find their place in society and just yeah. So as you can tell, I'm still working on my pitch for that book, but it's something that I'm passionate about. Book one is actually complete. I'm just right now just,
Wow,
working on getting actually through the agents and actually publishing
wow.
conversation. And then book two, it's already been the manuscript is done. It's already been gone through its first edits with my editor.
Oh,
Just working on revisions, and that one will be ready in the spring. So
oh,
yeah,
wow.
that's what I'm working on.
You've got a lot ongoing. I hope you find some time to sleep.
With my day job, that's a good, it's yeah, good question. I managed to like squeeze it in, but it's just oh, my secret is I don't watch television. I mean, I
I
watch a
don't watch
bit of
televisions too. I,
yeah. It's just
I
I rather
barely
write
watch
than watch
television.
things. Yeah, yeah, exactly.
What I know I
So
do is I read books in place of watching television. Sometimes I love,
yeah,
there is this comedy series I love to follow on Facebook. I think that's the only
Mhm.
movie sort of things that I love to watch. And it's like
Oh,
15 minutes every two days. Yeah, so
oh yeah,
that's
yeah.
where I keep catching television and movies. Yeah, so aside that, I don't have the I mean to be sitting down to a bunch of 2 hours, 3 hours watching a movie. Oh no.
Oh, exactly, exactly. I rather and I for me YouTube same thing kind of gives me like 10 minutes that I don't have to that I could walk away from it. But I rather read and I rather write than I mean
Uh,
personally. No knock on people who watch a lot of television. Do what calms you down
yeah.
and gives you joy. But it's like for me, it's just yeah. So that's how I find a lot of time to write because I don't get that distraction.
It's funny I can find someone who doesn't like watching television like myself too.
Well,
It's been a long while. I'm looking for
we're rare. We're rare. Most people like, what? You haven't watched an insert television show here and they try to go into a recap. It's like, no, no, I have no idea what you're talking about. It's okay.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing. I love the sound of that, really. And I love the sound of the other books you've got working on.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I'd also like to ask you, could you tell us what publishing is like for a published author like yourself? And also, are there any challenges you've encountered in the process of writing your books and also ever since it got published?
Oh, great question. And by the way, for this series,
Yeah.
I mean, I was self-published, which is actually through Amazon. Yeah, so I mean, it was for myself. I mean, I did do the submitting to publishers and agency as well. And at one point, the reason why I went self-publishing, because like at that point, I just really wanted to do it for me.
Mm,
So yeah, so I went through the self-publishing route.
mm,
Um, I had a really good experience though. I mean, not necessarily great feedback at the beginning, but now the feedback that I'm getting, for example, in Goodreads, I have like
mm,
over a 4.5 rating, which is great. I'm happy with that. But learning basically just a bit more about writing craft in regards to talk about
mm,
feedback before, learning about the art of publishing, what's needed. Really can't emphasize enough the importance of getting a
wow.
professional editor
Mm,
and really just working with that person just to help you to grow. Yeah, and really learning the in and outs. And now I'm really happy that I have a portfolio of work
wow.
that speaks for itself in regards to the feedback and so forth. And then I could take that to an agent and to a publisher and say, hey, this is
Mm,
what I've done on my own. And even in total right now, if you add in all the copies, I've sold almost 3,000 copies, which is both
wow.
the entire series combined.
Interesting.
And yeah, and since it's because I was just doing it as a hobby at
Mm,
first, it was enough. Now, yeah, I really want to actually just, especially when I retire from my day job, I really would want to be a full-time writer at some
wow.
point.
Uh,
And honing my craft. That's what that first series, that self-publishing journey really helped me to do and really helped me just to really figure out how to do this. Got me into that. We talked before about the discipline to just continue writing and adding one sentence to another to create a paragraph, to create a chapter, to create a story.
yeah.
That I now have is this something that I'm like, I do. And the final thing, I guess, is just as a writer, just
Mm,
yes, I would love to. The publishing is great, but it brings me so much like it's my mental health, it's my joy, it's creating stories, it's really sharing those stories with others and hoping they can lose themselves in these worlds as well.
mm,
Um, so yeah, so as like a first series self-published, but from here on in, yeah. And my editor really wants me to push me towards getting actually just a publishing deal. He's given me some great compliments. His name is Oren Edis,
mm.
Eades. I'm pronouncing that wrong. Really great, actually, editor. Doesn't let me get away with anything. You need an editor like that. But
Wow.
yeah, that's been actually my publishing journey so far. Yeah.
Yeah. I love your take on that, and I love hearing your take on that. And as you're speaking, some questions came to my head, yeah. But because of the time, I'm not sure I would love to ask. I just wanted to
Oh,
ask a bit of it, yeah, because I think I have like
sure.
three. Yeah, I wanted to ask how exactly how is the writing process like? How did you get I've mentioned the inspirations and ideas, but I wanted to ask how is the writing process like in terms of when you get the ideas, how did you go about, on what platform, how did you keep them, how did you go back to this later? How do you tell the story? Because writing a book, sometimes we may want to like, oh, I would love to remove this one, I would love to add this. How do you tell which to remove and which to add, what story to carry on? And like you mentioned in the past, that what there's a particular character that's supposed to stay like one or twice, but she ended up going and developing over and over and over again beyond your expectation. You never planned it initially. So how is a writing process like? I'm not sure if you get my questions really.
Yeah, I do. That's a great question as well. Actually, the writing process. Do you know what? I love just actually just writing, starting with a basic premise. I think everyone needs to
Yeah.
have that,
Yeah.
and not necessarily a full outline. I may have certain points, beginning, middle, and end, and maybe points between that I want to hit. But then the journey is to actually to find the pathway to the next point. And I love surprising myself with actually again
Uh,
like the character's voice. So for me, it's actually just sitting down there, and like I said, between 8 to 9 p.m. That's my writing time, and
mm,
I start sometimes with a certain character in regards to where they're at and where they need to be developed, and then I just write basically, well, basically I just write what needs to happen for their story.
mm,
I have so many versions though of each book. I basically do a point whatever version as I'm going
yeah.
through, and then if there's a major switch in plot, it's like, oh great, this is the actual story, and I want to switch it to that.
Yeah.
I complete a new version, I copy it and actually upversion it, and then I do it that way. I build. I obviously edit out some stuff doesn't
Yeah.
make sense anymore.
Yeah.
The story has really shifted from like talking maybe for example the route to infinity, my next series. The story has really shifted from the original concept to what it ended up with,
Mm,
but it's discovery. It's discovering what those characters need, what the story needs, what the plot needs.
yeah.
Um, they say not to be afraid to kill your babies, and
Um,
yeah, you need to let things go in order for the fuller stories to get together. But
yeah.
maybe I'll say one more thing. So I really think I've actually just sometimes like everything is a puzzle, and some things that don't seem to be related to each other, like for example,
Yeah.
the characters in Five Worlds, finding those link, the thread between them, the adventure, the kind of yeah, and finding the link between them. That's the adventure of really crafting a good story in my mind.
Yeah.
So you'll find some things that are not really, that doesn't seem to be related, but they have
Mm,
huge impact on the
absolutely.
whole entire story. And as the story builds, you find those links and you realize that, oh, that's why that happened.
Yeah.
So for me, it just really is yeah, just one sentence at a time. And maybe a I don't necessarily get writer's block. I mean, obviously, I get stuck. Everyone gets stuck.
Yeah.
But I do just, even if just writing a sentence or two and then just saying, hey, this doesn't work. Let's go back to a different plot or let's try something
Yeah.
else. And not being afraid to actually just do a lot of revisions. Maybe that's yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. Thank you so much. I'd like you to raise the books, all of them, to the camera again,
Sure.
one after the other,
Okay.
while you
Mhm.
tell us what platform they're available on for purchase, in case we have some viewers watching and would love to get a copy of it.
Fantastic. For these books here, so In the Father's Shadow,
Yeah.
uh, Dython's Tower, and A Sister's Sacrifice,
Yeah.
all of them are available just right now on Amazon. And for the hey, the Roots of Infinity,
Oh,
Conjunction Born, these are advanced readers copy. They're not available yet. They're actually and there's been a few changes in this book. But hey, if anyone actually is interested in, I have one extra copy left. If
uh,
you're interested, I will ship it to you on me. And all I ask is that basically you give me some feedback, and you have my link to
uh,
actually my website. So
yes.
yeah, this is not available yet, but I'll have a copy here for someone if they want to get it. And yeah,
Interesting. And I love to link in the description part of this interview where interested viewers can get a copy of Lincoln Shant's books directly on Amazon and Barnes& and Nobles on his website and also on other platforms. I also left link to his social media pages for possible
sure.
followings. So thank you so much, Lincoln, for accepting the invitation to be featured on P English Literature. I must say it's more than awesome. Very great, quite exciting, very fun having this conversation with you. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much for your time and actually just for the great questions and give me opportunities to talk about the books and what I love doing, which is writing.
Yeah, thank you.